UAW President Shawn Fain highlighted how far apart the union and Ford is in their bargaining, with Ford coming to the table asking for concessions. GM and Stellantis have yet to offer a counter-proposal.
Last week in Southern labor, every week, workers in the South are on the move, doing things, fighting for their rights, and winning and losing. Lots of stuff happening. So here's what Southern U.S. workers were up to from August 18th to the 25th. In new election filings, 36 workers at the North Carolina Association of Educators in Raleigh, North Carolina, filed for a union election with the North Carolina Staff Organization, and then, did you see this, Adam, withdrew their petition in the same week?
Yeah, I tried to do some digging about that. I've asked around. I'm waiting for some information about it. I assumed that this was a merger of a professional staff union and an associate staff union, right, and merging into one wall-to-wall union. But to be continued.
22 workers at Statesville Painting and Maintenance in Danville, Virginia, filed for a union election with the International Union of Painters and Allied Trades, District Council 53. 82 workers at Quest Diagnostics Incorporated in Tucker, Georgia, filed for a union election with the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, Local 728. 32 workers at Ray Magnet Wire Company in Ashland, Virginia, filed for a union election with the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 666. 200 workers at Lockheed Martin Bluegrass Station in Lexington, Kentucky, filed for a union election with the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers, and 60 workers at Smart Simple Solutions in Leesburg, Virginia, filed for a union election with the Ironworkers International Union. We had a few withdrawals last week. Restaurant Associates in McLean, Virginia, Jones Lang LaSalle workers in Jacksonville, Florida, and Ardent Mills workers in Sherman, Texas, all withdrew their petition for a union election. We had a few results. 65 workers at Santa Preen Production, Pensacola in Cantonment, Florida, voted against unionization with the IBEW Local 773, 26 to 34. 11 workers at NeuroTor Physical Therapy in Marietta, Georgia, voted in favor of unionization with the International Alliance of Theatrical and Stage Employees, 7 to 4. IATSE said in a statement that this will be the first time ever the union will be negotiating a contract with touring physical therapists.
Way to go, IATSE.
2,500 PhD students at Duke University voted in favor of unionization with the Duke Graduate Student Union, 1,000 to 131. I believe this is the first ever certified graduate student union in the South. Duke is a private university, so is under the National Labor Relations Act. In strikes and bargaining updates, we've got a lot. The WGA and SAG-AFTRA continue their strike against the media companies, and 5 late-night hosts started a podcast, presumably to cure their boredom, but also to raise money for their striking employees. Stephen Colbert, Jimmy Kimmel, Seth Meyers, Jimmy Fallon, and John Oliver have started the new podcast, Strike Force 5. You can listen to it on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. All the money made will go to the employees of those 5 late-night hosts. Workers at Starbucks in Scottsboro went on the first ever strike at the company in the state of Alabama, citing inconsistent scheduling, a refusal to make repairs that led to trip and fall hazards, and a refusal to bargain. You can read more about that on tvlr.fm. United Campus Workers, CWA Local 3865, announced last week that after a 6-month campaign by the union, the University of Tennessee, Knoxville announced major increases to minimum stipends for graduate assistants across the university. Graduate stipends for 9-month and 12-month contracts will immediately rise to $19,401 and $25,868 per year, respectively, which represents a 35% and 44% raise from the previous minimum stipends of $14,400 and $18,000, respectively, for 9-month and 12-month contracts. Workers at a Dunkin' Donuts in Atlanta, organizing with the Union of Southern Service Workers, went on strike for raises, better hours, vacation time, and benefits. UAW President
Sean Fain highlighted how far apart the union and Ford is in their bargaining, with Ford coming to the table asking for concessions. GM and Stellantis have yet to offer a counterproposal. The union filed a unfair labor practice for refusal to bargain against GM and Stellantis. And 500 auto workers with the UAW Local 863 in Louisville, Kentucky, held practice pickets last week. We're going to have more about the UAW negotiations and overtime. CWA members at Maximus, the call center workers that help Americans navigate the ACA marketplace and Medicare, including workers from Hattiesburg, Mississippi, took part in the 60th anniversary of the March on Washington to demand more paths for advancement, higher pay, and more breaks. The company has laid off hundreds of employees this year, the CWA alleges, in retaliation for union organizing.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
In politics and legislation, friend of the show, Warren Tidwell, was appointed to the governor's Resilience Council for the state of Alabama. We're really excited about his voice being on the council. The council will work with local, state, federal, and private partners to help communities build stronger, live safer, and recover quicker. The work of the council will be aimed at better preparing Alabama's communities to withstand events that result in harmful societal impacts. You'll remember that Warren Tidwell was a former employee of Hometown Action before starting his own nonprofit organization in Camp Hill, Alabama, to aid in long-term recovery efforts after a particularly bad hailstorm that left, if I remember correctly, something like 80% of the roofs in that area destroyed. Very bad stuff, but great to have his voice on the council.
Absolutely.
The Department of Labor announced last week that it is moving to expand overtime protections to an estimated 3.6 million more workers. The rule would restore and extend overtime protections to low-paid salaried workers by raising the salary cap from $35,568 to $55,000 a year. That is a huge increase. It will also better identify which employees are executive, administrative, or professional employees who should be overtime exempt. The rule would automatically update the salary threshold every 3 years to reflect current earnings data and restore overtime protections for U.S. territories. From 2004 until 2019, the department's regulation ensured that for U.S. territories where the federal minimum wage was applicable, so too was the overtime salary threshold. The department's proposed rule would return to that practice and ensure that workers in U.S. territories subject to the federal minimum wage have the same overtime protections as other U.S. workers. The Texas law forbidding municipalities from enacting worker protections above what the state sets was declared unconstitutional by a Texas judge, but the ruling has been appealed and waits a final decision. The Treasury Department released a new study about unions, and the findings are they are good, folks. Specifically, it found unions raise the wages of their members between 10 and 15%. Unions also improve fringe benefits and workplace procedures such as retirement plans, workplace grievance policies, and predictable scheduling. Unionization also has spillover effects that extend well beyond union workers. Competition means workers at non-unionized firms see increased wages too. Heightened workplace safety norms can pull up whole industries. Union members improve their communities through heightened civic engagement. They are more likely to vote, donate to charity, and participate in a neighborhood project. And the higher pay and job security of both union and non-union middle-class workers can further spill over to their families and communities through more stable housing, more investment in education, and other channels. Unions can boost businesses' productivity as well by improving working conditions and by giving experienced workers more of an input into decisions that design better and more cost-effective workplace procedures. Very cool report from the U.S. Department of Treasury. Here's another announcement from the U.S. Department of Labor. They announced last week that they will award more than $3 million to the state of Georgia to help identify and address barriers workers face when accessing state unemployment insurance benefits. The grant will be administered by the department's Employment and Training Administration and support Georgia's efforts to remove barriers related to race, age, ethnicity, language proficiency, disability status, geographic location, or other issues that make it hard for people to access
access unemployment insurance benefits. Funding is provided by the American Rescue Plan.
We need that in Alabama.
Yep. In internal union affairs, AFL-CIO President Liz Shuler and Secretary-Treasurer Fred Redmond delivered an inaugural State of the Union's address last week, where they released new polling which underscores the American people's support of unions, especially that of young workers, those of which that are under 30 support unions at approximately 90%. As well as Americans' view of unions as critical, as well as Liz Shuler's and Fred Redmond's view of unions as critical to growing the middle class and providing opportunities for working people to thrive. Additionally, both officers stressed that with this unprecedented level of support, working people in unions are prepared to organize like never before, hold big corporations accountable, and restore America's promise for all. A rural carrier for the U.S. Postal Service is seeking to decertify the National Rural Letter Carrier Association as the union representing rural carriers over what he says is the union failing to present them well, in particular with respect to the Postal Service's new policy that will cut the pay of 2/3 of rural carriers. The campaign is being led by a fellow who says he is a 15 member of the union and was a steward for a year before resigning. He is also saying that he is working with the Teamsters while the Teamsters say they are not working with him.
Interesting.
The UAW turned 88 years old last week. The unions and labor groups sent a letter to the Hyundai CEO pushing for Hyundai and its subsidiaries to hire locally, train workers from the communities around the plants, bolster safety standards, and protect the environment around the plants, which are expected to employ more than 30,000 Georgians and Alabamians. The coalition is seeking a binding agreement modeled on one reached last year with the electric bus maker New Flyer, which promised, among other things, that at least 45% of new hires and 20% of promotions would be women, minorities, and U.S. military veterans.
Also, very important there is card check neutrality as part of that community benefits agreement.
Steve Stutz, former international representative for the International Union of Operating Engineers, the local's business manager, and a current board member of the Muscle Shoals Democrats, said last week that it has been 29 years since he was first appointed to the international staff. He shared a newspaper clipping on Facebook where it was reported on in 1994, and I found that fascinating. The idea that we would have a press that cares enough about working people to report on a local union member being appointed to international staff. Not totally sure that we would see something similar today. If we missed something, please let us know, tvlr.fm/contacts, and we will include it in next week's update.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.